Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'm Lee, and in this video I'll be trying out the Vallejo ground texture acrylic rough grey pumice and finding out what it's like to base with. In this video we'll be taking the ground texture acrylic rough grey pumice and combining it with some other technical paints from Citadel and some paints to create some frosty bases. I've never used this before, so this will be a thorough review, and I'll just put across what I think it's like to work with, and hopefully that'll give you an idea whether or not this is something you'd like to add to your collection. And so I bought this, it's not sponsored or anything, so I'll be giving you a fair review based on what I've seen here. So you're going to get 200 mils altogether, so a really good amount, and I got this for like £7.80 on Amazon, so really great value. I'll put a link in the description below. Let's get this lid off and have a look. So this is quite different to the brown earth one, and right away you can see it's not like a moussey texture. This has got a lot more grit in it, and so let's have a good look with the tool. We'll scoop some out and see what it looks like. So it's very wet as well, pretty shiny actually, and yeah, quite light to draw the tool through. And so if I just grab hold of some, we'll have a look at what it's like. And just on my finger there, yeah, very gritty. It's much like caster sugar, like a fine sugar. So yeah, let's have a look close up. You can see there's lots of bits in there, and so that's going to give us some really nice texture, and I'm hoping this will come out with a nice snow effect. But let's grab some bases. So one, I'm just going to put the texture paste on. The other one, I'm going to combine some technical Agrel and Crackle paint, and then this one I'll show you how I fill up the gaps in those spaces that have got the little holes. So I'll just use this little scoop, the texture scoop tool from Citadel, and I'm just going to use the wider paddle, get a few scoops on there and then start spreading it around. You'll see later on in the video I use a coffee stirrer, which is a little bit better actually than this to give it a nicer effect for the snow. But if you want it to be like more like rocky, then you could flick it up a little bit. But I'm going to just try and give a nice even layer here, and I'm going to do this all over the base and just spread it across so it's the same thickness right across the base. And there you can see that's pretty even. There's a few bits just sticking up, but we'll see how much that actually shrinks when it dries and how much texture is left. So I think it'll shrink quite a bit. There's a lot of moisture in this. Then on the next one, I've done like a crescent shape with the texture paste, but now I'm going to grab this Agrel and Earth Technical Citadel paint, and this will crackle when it dries. So I've got an old brush here, and I'm going to put it on. I'm going to put it on quite thick in the center and just go a little bit thinner as I get to the edge. And the thicker you put this on, the bigger and deeper the cracks are going to be. But I want it to be like ice, so I want this to be quite fine. I don't want it really thick. I don't want it like chunky earth that's dried up or anything like that. So I put a little bit more on in the center, as you can see, and then push it right up to that texture paste. And I'm doing this while the texture paste is wet, so just being careful not to mix them. And there you can see just how much is on. There's a few blobs there, a little bit thicker in places, so we get a nice variation with the cracks. And then just a little bit of tissue paper and just clean off around the edge there. Next is the 40mm base. So this has got the hole in there, so we're going to fill that up. And I'll be using these for some objective markers. So I've got a bit of sprue here from one of the like smaller models, from the Chaos Sorcerer actually, and that fits just perfect in there. So I'm just going to trim that off, get the length right, get rid of that little knobbly bit that's hanging on there, so we'll trim that away as well. And then that should fit perfectly in the hole. So I'll just line it up before I glue it, just to make sure. Yep, that's spot on. So that's going to fill that up really nicely. You could use tape as well for this if you wanted to, but I wanted to see how this would work. And then I get lots of glue, put a little bit on each side, and then we'll stick that bit of plastic back in there, and then that's going to hold it in place. So another bead of glue down the other side there, and that's going to be plenty. That's not going to go anywhere. And then I'll just get it in there nice and carefully, line it up, make sure I've got the right thickness, and then that should fit bang on in. And then I'll just hold it like vertically for a little bit, just so that that sets and make sure it's flush. Now that's well dry now, so I've got an old twig here that I dried out in the oven, and I've got some little bits of grit that I just got from the lane. Again, just cleaned it and put it in the oven for a while to dry it out. And then I'm going to put a nice coat all over the base here, and I want to see how this sticks, that twig and the little stones. So you can see I haven't gone crazy here. There's not a huge amount, but it's a little bit thicker than the first one. And so I'll just push those stones in, put them in place there, give them a little push, And then, yeah, it should be quite strong. The last one I tried, the brown earth, was nice and strong. So I'm hoping this will hold it too, because then this is going to be really great for getting bases done quickly. Snap the twig. I'll put one in, and then I'll put one. So this one's going to go all the way along, and I'll put another one at an angle, so it's not touching as much as the paste. And then we can see how strong that is too. And then, just for a bit of realism, I'll go around with the smaller end of this little paddle and just put a little bit extra against the rocks where you imagine like the snow or earth would build up, a little bit more under there as well, under the twigs. And then we can see exactly what this will do. So there you are. You can see there's some different heights now as well in that paste. So that'll be really good to see what that dries like. And then clean up the rim, and then we're good to go. And then I thought it'd be fun to just do a time lapse so we can see that crackling. And this took about an hour and a half, maybe a little bit longer. And I've condensed it to 10 seconds here so you can see it crackling. It's a pretty satisfying thing to watch, actually. So that's pretty cool. And you can see all the others drying out as well. While it was drying, I took another base, just a small one I had, and then some layer Lothern blue paint. And I wondered what would happen if I put the blue underneath it and then put it on top. So let's find out. So I just put a nice coat on there. I don't water it down or anything. Just one coat all over, let it dry. And then once that was dry, I did a second coat. And then that gave us a nice solid colour. And then when both coats were completely dry, I got a coffee stirrer. And then I'm going to scoop this on. And again, I'm going to go for a nice even layer. And looking at those others as they were setting, I'm expecting that blue to come through quite a bit. And there we go, a nice even layer again. So I haven't put it on too thick, pretty much the same as the first one. And now it's the next day. These have dried thoroughly and you can see them all lined up. Here's the first one with those twigs and stones. So let's see how strong they are. I was really happy with this. That's on solid. That stone is not going anywhere. There's no movement at all. And the twigs as well. They're rock solid. So this is really great for fixing it down. And I believe you can fix the models like this as well if you wanted to. Then there's the one that I just did straight on the black. So you can see a lot of the black coming through, but it's gone and dried nice and even. And that's like sandpaper. That's so strong. And then here's this one. Really happy with this. A nice coat. It definitely looks frosty and like snow. And that crackle, now this comes off a little bit. You've got to be really careful here. So we're going to be like dry brushing and painting. So what you could do if you wanted to keep that colour though, is use some technical storm shield. And that will like seal it in. And you might need to put over some medium if you want to bring it back to matte. But there we are, this one's the blue one. A lot of that blue has come through, and that's really showing off the grey now, so that's really a nice combination. So let's get some white on there with some layer paint white scar, and I'll get this very vegan makeup brush. This is perfect for dry brushing, super soft bristles. You've got lots of control with the shape of it as well. And so I'll put some paint on the bristles, and then I'll work that in on some kitchen towel, really forcing it in. You can see how much paint I've got there. These paints are terrible, the white Citadels. They're all lumpy, every single one I've got. And so I've been trying some others that I get. The Vallejo one is much better, but I thought I'd use it because as it's lumpy, I can work the lumps out. So there we go. So when I'm happy and ready to go, I just go gently at first, rubbing the paint on there with that dry brush effect, going round in circles, back and forth, really trying to bring out the most raised areas. And then when I'm happy with how much paint is coming off, I get a bit more vigorous with the brush, go in some bigger circles, try and get a lot more white around the edges. And then you can see here, I'm going at it again. I put some more paint on, and now I'm a bit more confident with how much is coming off. But there's really a lot of paint required to cover up that blue. That blue is really strong coming through. But I like the effect. You can see a lot of the grey still, and that white has certainly brightened it up. Now we'll take some Valhalla Blizzard, and this is another Citadel technical paint, and this is going to give us an effect of snow. And you can paint it on with a brush, but I thought I'd try and use this little paddle first. And so there we go. Let's stop faffing around with it. Get it on there. So just push a bit on. And I'm not going to go crazy with it. I don't want to swamp it on. So I'm just like pushing it around and then making it quite random. And then we'll see how thin this dries as well. So that's how much I've put on. And then we'll put that to one side. Let it dry. And then as it's drying, actually, I'll do the rim. So let's grab some Thunderhawk blue, a bit of blue tack on the end of that big chunky brush. And then we can pop that on there, and that's going to hold it. And that'll serve as a nice little turntable to make it really easy to paint. And I love this Thunderhawk blue. It's such a nice colour. And I'll be using this for all the rims of the bases for my Space Wolves. So yeah, one coat, let it dry, then pop another one on. Then we'll go back to the base Corax white paint. And I'm going to give one coat over the 3 bases that we've done previously. So this is just because we want to put some blue on it. So I thought if I base it white first, Then when it dries, I'll put a layer of blue on there, and then we can do some more dry brushing and then compare the different effects and see how they come out. So just on this one as well, on that crackle one, I just decided to paint over it because that paint can also help secure it in there, and so that worked fine. So I didn't use the hard coat or anything. Then another coat on this bit, and then I also painted the white over the stones as well. So I'm going to paint the stones and then paint them back to look like stones. And then once that layer paint is completely dried, I took a mix of contrast Talisar blue, a beautiful colour blue, and I mixed that with technical contrast medium. And I use this on my Ultramarines, so I've got a pot where I've got 3 parts medium to 1 part blue. Give it a really good shake though, it's really important to mix it together well. And I'm just going to put 1 coat, not flood it, but just a nice coat evenly all over the base. And I'll do that for all 3 of the bases. Then I took some Skeleton Horde contrast paint, and this is all I'm going to use on those stones. So I'm not going to do lots of different colours because I'll dry brush over it and I want it to look frosty and icy. So 1 coat of this, it's all that's needed. And again, I'm not flooding it. I'm not putting loads on there at all. Then when it's completely dry, we go back and do that same dry brush technique, starting off slowly. And I'm definitely finding with this Talisar blue, it's really strong. So there's a lot of dry brushing required here. So I'm doing quite a few times. I'm going back to the paint, loading the brush up, using that kitchen towel, then doing the dry brush technique, and I'm going over and over and over it until I'm happy. But I really like the look of it. I love that colour coming through. It's really bright, it's really over the top and icy, but I think this is going to work really well with the theme. And I love how it came out on this crackle paint. So here I just start like going in gently, and then when I'm happy I start doing these circular motions and then just running that brush around in circles, and then it's coming to life. And yeah, I'm really happy with this technique. It certainly worked well on that crackle. It's exactly what I was looking for. It looks like the snow's revealed like an icy puddle, or maybe the fringe of a lake or something, and that's coming through. And then exactly the same, I just went straight over those twigs and then over the rocks and really working it in and getting it in there. So I've been really rough here, but my brush isn't loaded with paint, so I can get away with it. And those are pretty much ready to go now. I'm really happy with how that came out. We've got the 2 different looks. This one is the one with the blue underneath, and so we've got a little bit more of a grey effect, but this is more of an icy blue, and that Talisar has really come through nicely. And I prefer this one, but if you want something a bit greyer, then certainly do the other colour blue. But I think this Talisar's worked really nicely. Could tone it down a little bit maybe. Certainly for these, if you've got lots of rocks, maybe add a bit more medium. But for the ice crackle, I was really pleased with that. So now I'm going to take some more of that Valhalla Blizzard and just start dotting this around on the other bases. So we've done that first one and that's drying. So I'll do the same with all of these, and then I won't go crazy with this one. I might put a bit of a chunky bit there just to see how thin it goes. And then we'll do that with all 3 bases. For that cracked ice, I didn't want any snow on that at all, so I'm just going for that crescent shape that's got all the texture. And then finally on this one, I'm putting quite a bit in amongst the rocks and amongst those twigs, because the snow would build up and hold there, so it's going to keep it a lot colder and intact. So I'm kind of replicating that by putting quite a bit more in with my brush. And then once we've done that, I painted the rims, and then here's all 4 of the bases complete. So really nice selection here. Here's the first one. You can see it's a lot grayer, not as bright, but once we move on and start looking at the others, the crackle paint, that's really coming through nicely. And then this one with all the twigs, I think we get a nice effect. So there's all 4 lined up. Some different ways of doing it, but I think this paste is perfect for making a snow look and then combining it with some crackle paste. I think it's a winning recipe. And now I'll do a little bit of tweaking, maybe with that Talisar blue and the different quantities, and then I'll do another video where I show you how I'm going to do my Space Wolf army basing. So really great texture paint, really happy with this, and I'm so glad I bought this one. The first one I got was Brown Earth, and that was perfect. There's a video on the channel if you want to check that out, but I think this one is perfect for any kind of snow effect. If you're interested in Space Wolves, then I am building a 3,000 point army, and there's a whole 30-day video series for that planned. I'm at day 1 now as this video is made, but if you're watching it in the future, it could all be on the channel already, so that'll be linked at the end of this video if you'd like to check it out. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that this gave you a good idea about what this texture paste is all about, and now hopefully you can decide whether or not you'd like to add it to your collection. I'd like to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters who make these daily videos possible, and if you're interested in joining the community, it'd be awesome to see you there, and I'll put a link for that in the description down below. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Please like if you like it, subscribe for more videos like this, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to join me next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games.